Welcome back, everybody, to ND and Free, the podcast brought to you by the Awareness Space Network, a podcast and social media platform that explores how NDers can live their truth and feel free in their lives. We hear from inspiring coaches, therapists, experts, and fellow ADHDers from all over the world who sit down with me, Owen Morgan, to share their wisdom with us. I'm a wellbeing coach and a passionate neurodivergent human who received his ADHD diagnosis at 41. That day, the truth transformed my life, and I was finally free. Free of the burden of not knowing why I struggled to fit in. Free of the burden of traditional, societal expectations. I'm sure we can all appreciate that. My mission is to explore how the human spirit and understanding our whole self can bring us a life full of possibilities. So today, guys, I'm very excited. We're back again with another Neurodivergent Thrive Guide show. And we are sat down with neurodivergent therapist Katie Andrews of the Neurodivergent Therapy Space. Welcome, Katie, to the show. I'm really excited to jump in because I know the good work you're already doing and the fact you're surrounded by your team at the therapy space as well is amazing. So I can't wait to pick your brain and explore your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited too.
Yeah, it's good. Like I say, as everyone knows, I'm on Instagram. I'm looking for people. I like the vibes, and I'm going to give them a
hmm
DM. Hope I don't get rejected,
hmm
and in we go. So luckily, you did not do that, and we've got this up and running very early. So give us some context just to kick us off. So before we jump into kind of people you're working with, what you're seeing, give us some context to where you are right now as far as your business, who you kind of working with and what is your business structure, things like that. Give us some
Yeah.
context.
Yeah. Okay. So I set up by myself actually a few years ago, but wanted a team around me. Set up straight away as kind of a neurodivergent. No, I didn't actually. I set up as just a therapist and then quickly went into specializing in neurodivergent therapy. And my friend Andy, who I trained with, we hit off straight away about ADHD and ourselves kind of being ADHD and um, that kind of process, lifelong living like this without having a diagnosis, not really understanding each other or ourselves. Um, and so I became very busy very quick, and my capacity to hold people is limited because my energy, I can lose energy very quickly. So I asked if Andy wanted to come on board, and that worked really well. And then since then we've now got a team of 5, and we're all autistic and ADHD, and it's a really nice space. There's a couple of therapists who've been doing it for a while, and there's a couple that have just started out, and they've just finished their training and they're just building their confidence. So yeah, it's a really nice, accepting and understanding space.
I love that. And I guess, no matter what walk of life we're from, ND or otherwise, I think as a therapist, it's so important to have peers that you trust and you can share with and just be able to feel seen because we've got to remember
Yeah,
that therapists and coaches need to feel seen too. So
yeah,
I guess in
absolutely.
any walk of life, but most certainly I'm sure with neurodivergence as well, because you have maybe some more unique things that go with this, like you said, maybe burning out quicker or
Yeah,
knowing not to do too many because of
yeah,
hyperfocus and things like that. So do you
yeah.
find, it's an obvious question, but do you find, yeah, having that team, and I guess that family is a way of being able to keep check of yourself, I suppose, making sure you're doing right by yourself because it's hard to see it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a bit like we meet on a monthly basis, or we haven't for the past couple of months just for other life stuff, but usually we meet on a monthly basis, and it is a little bit like peer supervision. And when you're a therapist, you have supervision to make sure you're kind of on the right track. But it's good to explore, it's a safe space to explore different elements that might come up, and then you've got other people to kind of chip in and say, oh, I wonder if it's coming from here, or I wonder if it's maybe this, or it's not just what two people. Do you see what I mean? You get a bit of a
Yeah.
broader look at it. So it's more of a supportive environment with a group rather than just one on one, but also with we're autistic and ADHD, so that it's that deeper understanding of how our brains work and what might be going on.
Yeah, certainly. I love what you said there about the peer supervision. I always, recommend to people, when you're looking for somebody to work with, have a little look on the website if you can see anything about
Yeah,
that. See
yeah,
if they get peer support and they're held accountable too to the
yeah,
work that they're doing. I think it's a good thing to look for, guys,
yeah.
to know you're in safe hands. So that's really lovely. So we're going to just touch on briefly on your own personal experience because I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about your amazing work. But the first question always is, it might be obvious, but why? Why do you want to help neurodivergent people?
Mm.
Obviously,
Hmm.
you are one of us, but
Yeah.
why is it so important to you to help that population?
So when I was in my therapy training, I didn't have a diagnosis at that point. I didn't really know what was going on. But I quickly realised I didn't process things or experience things the same as other people. And when I went into therapy, the kind of traditional therapy is was it felt very uncomfortable for me. I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't getting anything from it. I wasn't quite sure what I was supposed to do. I've said all my life stuff. Why are you not telling me what I need to do next? You know, it felt lonely. It felt isolating. And then I went to another therapist and had some trauma work, which was really, really good. But still, there was a mismatch in understanding my experience and where I was at. And it was kind of pointed out to me that I was in control of some of these behaviours and difficulties that I experience. And in my head, I'd leave and I think, I just don't, I think I have any control of these kind of sensory issues or these emotional challenges that I experience. And anyway, fast forward, realised that I was autistic. I kind of already had ADHD in my awareness. And it felt really important to be a therapist and have a therapy space where autistic and ADHD people can come in and not have me just sit there and nod along and say that feels really difficult because
Mm.
that can feel really lonely and it can feel really inauthentic. So for people to have a space where they feel safe and we can work together to figure out what's going on and untangle those really messy bits, and for them to not feel alone in that space is really important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think, I'm thinking, oh, should I have coaching or should I have coaching? And what should I do about medication? It's all so early on. But
Mm.
I know that I will need a space where I can say, these are all the things I might do. Is
Hmm.
it okay if I play with this
Yeah.
rotating toy
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
and not to feel silly or to
Yeah.
feel shamed? And I know it's obvious that an ND would use an ND therapist, but at the same time, maybe not. You
And
might just go
also,
to,
yeah, sorry. Also, you might not know you're neurodivergent. And so if you're
Mm.
going into therapy and maybe you need to fidget with something, and then a therapist is trying to look deeper into that as a trauma response, well, it might not be a trauma response. It might just be because you need to fidget. And
Yeah.
you can add layers of shame onto that if you're leaving thinking, oh, I just can't fix this thing. I have to keep moving or I have to keep fidgeting. Then that has a knock-on effect long term, do you know?
Yeah. And I think you're right, is that some people may see a therapist who has no training or no knowledge at all about neurodivergence, which is fine. But if you're the client you are suspecting, maybe you're wondering, it might be worth just focusing in that area of professional
Hmm.
support because otherwise, if they've got no training in it, they're not going to see it. And I know
Yeah.
that personally. I've been seeing therapists and coaches for years trying to deal with what I now know are my ADHD
Hmm.
presentations, but thinking it was something else the whole time and not understanding why I wasn't getting better. Like,
Yeah.
why is the breathing technique not
Yeah.
sorting out my anxiety?
Yes. Yeah.
And if I'd been with somebody that had at least a little bit of the training, they go, ah, have you thought about this? I have a colleague that offers this. And then
Mhm.
that's your gateway, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's not going to amplify your shame that you already have about not something not working or you're not, I don't know, performing the way other people perform in therapy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think thinking you're broken to begin with
Yeah.
is one layer, but then when you can't seem to do anything about it, you think, oh, I really am. This is just the
Yeah.
way my life's going to be now. And that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And that's why we're all out in this community. That's why you do what you do. That's why all the podcasters are doing what they're doing. We're just trying to
Mm.
let people know, no, there's hope. There are
Hmm.
people out there waiting for you, which is
Yeah.
amazing. So you said as you were studying, you were like, maybe is there something going on there? So just sort of in the run up to thinking, I might go and check this out. Why were you like, oh, maybe an assessment might be worth looking at? Just what happened? I need to
So
know.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. So obviously in when you're trained to be a therapist, you do a lot of group processing. A lot of people are talking about their trauma and how they process that trauma. And for me, I was experiencing these things that no one else was talking about. It. I was like, I'm just not quite the same as everybody else. And I'd actually seen on TikTok. I don't even have TikTok, so I don't know how I saw this video, but I saw this video of a adult woman who was just having a conversation. Something had happened, and she went into a meltdown. And she shared that because she felt it was important. And as soon as I saw that, I just was overwhelmed with emotion. I was like, that is what I do. I get overwhelmed with emotions. And I experience these intense like they just take over my body. And so then started obviously obsessively researching autism. ADHD was already in my awareness because my son was diagnosed, and through that process kind of I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I definitely do all of that. And so I went first through the NHS, but was on a waiting list for absolutely ages, and I wasn't really getting anywhere. So I ended up going private, and I already knew that I was autistic. It made so much sense, and I think my family have also started establishing their neurodivergence, ADHD, and autism, and so when I received the diagnosis, it was very validating to have someone say, yeah, this is why you have experienced this your whole life. Like, you're not mental, you're not crazy, you have challenges, and that's okay. And so it was really validating. And that's kind of all I've got from it, really. It's just that validation.
Yeah, I mean that's a common thing that's come up on the show many times. I often said people are sick of me saying it, but it was equally liberating and devastating at the same time. So it's like it's
Mm,
validating, but for me, I had the extra stuff in there because where I got to in my life, I was just feeling so like, oh, how am I? How's this all I've done? Or not?
yeah.
How I've done loads. Sorry,
Yeah.
reword it. For any coaches listening, no, I've done loads. I'm so proud. I mean, other sort of circumstances of the way I was living.
Mm,
And it's devastating. You're thinking, oh God, if I'd known 20 years ago, what would I have
yeah.
done? And things like
Yeah.
that. It goes through your head. And then you're
Yeah.
just full of liberation. Then, like, oh my God, okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I will do this and I will do that. And even though I don't have too much time, I'm going to keep my podcast going because I love doing it. And that's no shame in it.
100%. Yeah.
So it's interesting that some people like were already so self-aware
Mm.
that there's something like that happening that it just says, yes, you're right. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I knew I was right. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
that as well. But no, yeah, it's really, really interesting how people get to that. And then I find that so many of us guys, and certainly with you, you get out there and you start making
Hmm.
change and
Yeah.
you set up this amazing business and build your team. And I think that's really, really inspiring. And I think no matter how big or small we find these things that we want to do after diagnosis, then just go for it
Mm.
because you are valuable and you matter. That's really
Mm.
special.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much. Just get a bit of context in there. So let's dive in. You have obviously a background in somatic training. I saw that
Hmm.
on your website. We've been talking about trauma on this channel for years. So go back, guys,
Mm.
on episode like 106 or something at this point. So go back. There's so much stuff on trauma and CPTSD and,
Amazing.
talking about Basil's work, Body Sleep Score, talking about
Yeah.
people work.
Yeah.
We talk about all of this. So today we might be able to marry some of this up, but let's just
Mm.
dive kind of in with looking at the key blocks and struggles that you see with clients. So we are hearing some of the same stuff, but I'm hoping that gets reaffirmed or we find new things. So what are the key things that people are coming to you with, would you say, from an ND perspective? What are the key presentations that they're wanting to address?
So, key presentations are usually clients are wrapped up in shame, and they want to change the way they are. They feel like they need to perform like neurotypical people perform, and they've usually had years and years of you're lazy, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. So they're just wrapped up in layers of shame. And so they clients will often come in and they'll say, oh, I've got this I've got this trauma, and I want to work through this trauma so that I can be this person, and I can live this life. But when you have trauma and you're also autistic or ADHD, they get entangled, and sometimes you can't separate them. You don't know what's what. And so it's really peeling back the layers of the shame to come to allow people to start being able to hold boundaries with other people, and to start acknowledging what it is that they want, what it is that they like to do, whether that's a should or a shouldn't in society or in your family dynamic. So you might have a family dynamic and people might say to you, well, you need to I don't know, pick up your towels every time you've had a shower. Don't leave them on the floor.
Mm.
For ADHDs, that's virtually impossible. They're not going to remember to do stuff like that. So it's actually like, where are you with this, and what matters to you, and how can you hold a boundary with your family member to say, actually, that's okay. That's my towel. I'll deal with my towel when I want to deal with my towel. You don't need to worry about that. Like, and so by unpicking those kind of parts of yourself and figuring out what it is you like, we can then start to work on building accommodations for you, and just peeling back the layers of the shame, because actually who you are is not wrong. You just work differently, and that's okay. So yeah, I think one of the key things is shame, because it just builds and builds and builds.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think over the years it's just going to build up because you're exposed to new things like long-term relationships, maybe having a
Mm,
family,
mm,
sustaining a job to support your family. So you end up having to add all of that on,
yeah,
and the blocks that you're having can cause real damage to your
yeah.
loved ones in a way, not directly. And I
Mm-hmm,
think that's a really key thing. And it's just what you say, because we talk about how it's important for a therapist or counselor to have neurodivergent training.
mm-hmm,
But I think it's also important that both those people have
mm-hmm,
trauma-based
mm-hmm.
training as well, so you can see
100%.
that.
Yeah.
So I've always been a big advocate for that. So, I've done lots of training, but I've done lots of little CPD things like that because I think it's really important. I
Mm,
did ACT as well, so acceptance commitment
mm,
therapy. So I did a whole stuff on that as well. But it's it's interesting, isn't it? Because people will be lost. Me personally, anyway. I'm not speaking for everybody else, but lost was the word.
yeah,
I was so lost. I couldn't figure out where issues began, or what was just my personality and
yeah,
what was just my environment, even, which is
yeah,
understandable. If your environment is unsafe, that's not
yeah,
on you.
yeah,
And it's can get very lost. So when the people
yeah.
I was seeing, it was all about that. It's like I feel so lost, and that person's
Mm,
able to help you, like you just said,
yeah.
find their way home, I guess, to who they really are, which is
Hmm.
quite cheesy. But do you find that that's part of their journey, is to find out who they are at their core in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. Find out who they are at the core and become accepting of who they are. Like, love who they are, not just, oh, this is who I am. That's horrendous. Do you know, like, actually really, some people start in therapy and they'll be full of shame and trauma and all of this stuff, and it might take them a couple of months. Some people it might take a couple of years. Like, it completely depends. But to see the journey from the way they're wrapped up in all of this stuff when they come in, to coming to a point where they can go, yeah, do you know what? I really struggle with this, and I am okay with that. That's absolutely fine. If you've got a problem with how I struggle with this, that's your problem. That's a you problem. That's not a me problem. Do you
Mm.
know? And for them to hold those boundaries of, I'm not going to do this thing that causes me difficulties and is inauthentic to me just to please you, is it's just incredible.
Yeah, I find that the biggest part of my journey, and people I've spoken to, is the relationship first. So the relationship with ourselves, the relationship with our presentations, the relationship with our thoughts and our behaviors and our patterns. And it's trying to get to a place where, like you said, it's not some weird cleansing exercise. You're not being sent off
Yeah,
to some strange camp where you're going to be cleansed of all your
yeah,
dark, endy energy. It's
yeah.
like what is actually having an impact? What's really actually taking
Mm-hmm.
a toll on you and
Mm-hmm.
your loved ones? And actually, who really cares about that one? That one's just if you can even find it fun, that's quite helpful.
Mm.
But it's not all of these things need to be cleansed out. It's just how can we best be with them and have a healthy relationship with them so we can actually make some progress, but without all the
Yeah.
pressure. And I
Yeah.
guess that you do find that people maybe struggle with that is knowing what the expectations are of those presentations. You know, they
Mm.
want to get rid of it completely, which might be a dangerous mindset.
Yeah.
You have to sort of coach them through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think whenever someone comes in and wants to completely get rid of something, that's usually because society has told them they're completely wrong with whatever they're struggling with and however they perform. And I think if I look back to my younger years, I really struggled academically, and in school and my son experienced the same. In school it was an absolute nightmare. I felt just like an alien, and I just didn't fit in, and I couldn't understand. It's almost like if you're on a track and you're going to do a race, and everybody else knows exactly this track is so obvious. It's like there to there, and everyone else just knows the route, and I'm there like, why is everyone understanding this thing? And I don't get it. And so obviously in a school environment, and you probably experience this yourself, it's a one size fits all environment. And if you don't get it and you're not there,
Hmm.
you're cast out. You're not doing something right. And so I think it's pulling people back to who they are and what they can accept and can do and don't like and don't want to do, to um to kind of put the society expectations over there. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's interesting with the younger kids and in that school system, slightly different. I get that it must be very hard. I don't, let's not go down this road in this conversation, but I get why it would be hard for the structure to actually make any sort of valuable
Mm.
change with that.
Mhm.
It's just letting people know that when it comes to learning, you can learn for your whole life. So if you can get support in school to get you through and to
Mhm.
get through the exams. When you
Mhm.
come out of that, when you go to university or college, you have much more ability to utilize lots of different tools, and that's where the real learning can really take place. So it's knowing like it's not the end if you can't quite do that. So I'm doing
Mm.
a degree now at 40. I signed up at
Mhm.
40 for my degree, Open University, and it's incredible. I
Amazing.
told them, look, I'm neurodivergent. Well, I didn't know to begin with, but I told them, and they said, cool. How does that impact you? I said, I can't sketch like because I'm doing graphic design, the
Cool.
sketching and early development, I can't do it. My brain doesn't
Mhm.
want to sketch and try and get there. My brain already knows roughly what the finale looks like. So
Mhm.
can I do that and then tell you how I got there by starting to build it? So
Yeah.
voice record it. These are my
Mhm.
notes. This is what my brain said. I can't
Mhm.
draw it out. My brain said this. And
Mhm.
they said, yeah, that's great. And it means that I'm doing really, really well. And they catered for that. So just know if you have had that school experience, further education is
Yeah.
incredible and
Yeah.
they will help you through and it feels really validating. Complete
Yeah.
tangent, guys. Side quest
Yeah.
complete. Let's come back. So what I wanted to ask you, because this is really true to me and some of my friends, is that I saw a lot of people about trauma.
Mhm.
So for years, when I was all my stuff was a kid, I didn't remember anything. Katie, I didn't
Mm.
remember anything until I was about
Mm.
10. I don't remember anything about living in Wales at all.
Okay.
Gone. I don't know what the house looked like, my school.
Mm.
Weird.
Yeah.
But the point of the story is that I'd worked so much on trauma. I've now got to a point going, I'm not sure all of it was trauma. I think a lot of it was how I was being perceived by my environment.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
was being shamed for how I was behaving, which actually laid on a form of trauma anyway, that I didn't
Yeah.
feel seen and held
Yeah.
and understood. But I had got to a point where I completely kind of lost track of what was trauma, what wasn't, what's a story.
Yeah.
So how do you find that? Is it complicated in a way that people might think all of this is trauma and then they have to go, oh, some of it is actually neurodivergent. Oh no, which one's which?
Mm.
That must be
Mhm.
really hard for people. It certainly was for me.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? Because it's a complicated topic, but
Yeah, it is a complicated topic, and it kind of tangles in with each other in a sense. I think it's really important to acknowledge that if you are autistic or ADHD, your nervous system is much more sensitive than a neurotypical person. So when you experience a trauma as a young person, you will experience that trauma obviously on a physical level, and then it will just keep getting added on. So you might experience a trauma of, like you say, not feeling seen, not feeling heard or understood, and that's abandonment trauma. That's feeling really alone. And then throughout your life, it's very common then for a lot of ADHD and autistic people to regularly feel abandoned or drop. I always use the word dropped because it's not, sometimes abandonment can feel really like quite a loaded word. You can regularly feel dropped, and that just kind of adds more files to that abandonment trauma, which then is, if we don't look at that, we don't process that, it feels huge every time it comes up. And so I think when people come in and they say, right, I've got a heap of trauma and I want to untangle it, and I want to know what's my trauma and I want to know what's my neurodivergence. We can untangle some of it and we can say, yeah, that's definitely trauma, but sometimes we can't, and sometimes it's just working with that. But also acknowledging that when you experience a trauma, whilst we can process it and we can do a lot to kind of expand our window of tolerance to sit with it and accept it and allow it to move through our bodies, it will still surface throughout your life. It's just it won't surface in such a big way. And it's kind of a similar experience when you're thinking about the challenge you have as an autistic or ADHD person, is you will experience these things but we can put things in place so that you experience them less, or you have accommodations so they're not affecting you as big. And it's the same with trauma. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's coming to a place of acceptance for both. Acceptance that I have trauma and this is a big trauma and this is how I respond. And if you're in a safe relationship or you have safe people, you can say, do you know what, that just really triggered my abandonment trauma. It's made me feel really bad. And if that person can hold you, they can say, do you know what, I can really see how that's happened. How can I help you? Do you know? And it's always there, but you're in a safe space so that you can feel it, you can experience it, but it can quickly go back through kind of move through your body, if you like, so you're not feeling it in such an intense level.
Yes, this all sounds very familiar with some of my experiences, and I think there's something you touched on really, really important for people to understand is, we feel things so intensely and so deeply,
Yeah.
and that can be a really beautiful thing. It means that
Mm.
people like my partner, who's ADHD as well, her ability to be absorbed in awe. So the
Mm.
awe of the sea, or the awe of a view, or the awe of the stars and the
Absolutely.
sunsets. Like, I'm getting emotional about it now because it's so beautiful watching how I've struggled to connect in that way so deeply, but she can. And I'm like, oh my God,
Mm.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
But also there's the other side. So when we
Hmm.
experience a traumatic event, I know I'm sort of saying this is an actual thing, but it's when would you say we're much more likely? That's this really controversial question. Are we much more likely to be traumatized on a deep level because of the hypersensitivity? So even if we're misreading a situation, or if it's a real bad situation,
Yeah.
that is gonna
Yeah.
completely overwhelm our nervous system, and it's
Yeah.
gonna be pretty horrible, and we are much more likely to then carry that on with our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same. It's very similar to our sensitivity to, I don't know, sounds or visuals and stuff like that. The trauma it's huge. It impacts in a huge way. I don't know if you can relate to this, but for me, I would have a trauma response to something. It would be so big. The feelings would be so big. I could not contain the feelings. But another person might have a response to that trauma and they might acknowledge it and acknowledge it feels really bad, but they don't have the huge reaction that I would experience. So it was like, how do you do that? I can't do that. And so again, it's kind of yeah, it's acknowledging that we are much more sensitive to stimulation, but also the trauma and what happens to us throughout the days. And again, coming back to having people that are safe to be able to say, this is what's just happened for me. Or even if you can't say it in the moment, sometimes we can't access it in the moment. We're so flooded and overwhelmed, can't access that in the moment. But when we come out of it, say, this is how I received what you just said to me. And it really impacted me and it took me to a really dark place. And for them to be able to say, yeah, I hear you. I can see why that's happened. How can I help you? And not come from a place of, well, that's not what I meant. You're overreacting. You're this, you're that, because that's just going to add. Do you know? That's not going to be helpful in any way.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so often with people who controlling their sort of anger. That's one of my things. It's one of the biggest shame ones I have.
Yeah.
I have enough self-awareness now cultivated for all the people that support me over the years, cultivated enough space to catch it and go, go away a sec and just nothing's permanent. Things are always in flow.
Yeah.
Things never stick around. You come to and from, and then come back into it. It's not easy. It's so easy. It's actually easier just to start arguing back. That's not what I said. Why would you think that? And it's such a hard skill, but once you start practicing it, it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
And you can say, "Oh, hello," even name it, give it a name
Yeah.
or a
Yeah.
color, all the
Yeah.
classic stuff. And you're
Yeah.
able to say, "Oh, here it is." So, I have I'm trying to talk too much on the show, but I have a dread response, Katie. So that's my main one. So
Mm,
when I feel like I'm about to be rejected, or done something wrong. Oh my
mm,
God, I think I've done something wrong.
yeah.
Guttural, I think I'm going to die. The world's collapsing
Yeah.
in on me. It's horrendous. I've had it my whole
Mm,
life. I've been working on it for years with counselors and therapists, now knowing it's
mm,
this intense RSD
mm,
response
mm,
and knowing that I can cultivate that over time and make it easier for myself. But I get it for other people. So, Katie, something
mm,
happened to you. Maybe
mm,
you did a post and people misinterpreted it or were really horrible to you.
mm,
I'm going to
mm.
feel that too. I'm going
Yeah.
to go into dread on your behalf.
Yeah.
So it's sort
Yeah.
of empathy thing. And it's just
Yeah.
understand. But I know that the point of me saying this is I know this is a thing for me, the RSD. And even though I've built a life where I avoid being rejected or
Mm,
I avoid getting it wrong. So do
mm,
low level skills, which
mm,
means I can't get it wrong. That's how I've adapted. Problem with that is I
mm.
then don't get to grow and build a career that I need or
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
So it's not helping me
Yeah.
keeping that. How can I take a safer environment, but where I can still push myself and grow?
Hmm.
Does that make sense? I've said a
Yeah.
lot there, and I think as a therapist, people are like, "Yes, Owen, you've got
Yeah.
this." But it's interesting, isn't it? How we that self-awareness piece, which is how this podcast all began years ago, is not easy, but it's one of the most powerful tools you can ever have in your toolkit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to touch on that a little bit because that was one of the things that drew me to say yes to you for this podcast, because on your voice note you acknowledged that you struggle with rejection sensitivity, and I thought, I really love that because we need to talk about this more because we do experience it on a really big level, and there's a huge amount of shame attached from society about that. We shouldn't react like this and we should be fine and we should just get on with it and we need thicker skin and all of the stuff, that the narratives that we tell each other, when actually no, we do experience rejection, and it's okay to respond in the moment with those feelings. But if you can acknowledge it later and go, I see what just happened there. I think I was feeling really sensitive, and so actually I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way. Do you know, it's the trauma's there and the rejection is there, and that's okay. But let's not add a load of shame onto it as well. Let's just kind of, yeah, that's okay. That's how I responded. I'm human, and I'm a ADHD, and that's how I
Yeah.
process stuff.
Yeah, releasing some of that shame is an absolute game changer for so many humans out there. It's such a debilitating way of being, and I think you said that's when people at the beginning of the episode we were talking about that's how what people come to you with, and I think it's a big part of it. So yeah, with the key breakthroughs, I've got two little versions of it. So is it a combination of the aha moment? So aha, I see that's what
Hmm.
I'm doing, and then cultivating awareness from there, or is it actually they're making changes and they're seeing changes in the environment and loved ones seeing them differently? Is it a combination of that, or is it the self acceptance aha moment that's the most powerful part? Hope that kind of makes sense. What's like the key pathway ish that people are? breaking through?
Do you know what? I think it's all three. I think all three of them can you they kind of it works together, because if you can have the aha moment, which is amazing, and that adds a dose of, oh my goodness, that makes sense, that's self-knowledge, which always helps. And you can have the, what was the other one you said?
Sort of like they're working on the tools that you're giving them, and things start to improve, and then
Yeah,
that's how they start to realize they're getting better. So the aha is
yeah,
not as important for them. It's the this tool's working. I can't believe it type thing.
yeah. So with the tools is sort of looking at your boundaries, looking, unpicking at why you're doing something or why you're responding in a certain way. And and with those two things that happen kind of throughout sessions and throughout the work, you then come to a place of self-acceptance. So it kind of all happens along the way, and they're all really important, because if you don't have the aha moment, you're not going to get to implementing those tools and those skills to be able to conduct in an authentic way.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I just a very quick example. I think you appreciate that my stepson's 8.5, but what we started to notice is that if he's hanging around with a friend for more than 45 minutes, he seems to go, he's hyper at the beginning,
Mm,
and then he starts to crash. And after 45 minutes, he loses it completely.
mm-hmm.
And then he will think it's something to do with the other child, and then will
Yeah.
say, I don't want to be friends with them. So because
Mm-hmm.
he thinks it's them that's
Yeah.
done him wrong, when really it's just he's got so
Mm-hmm.
over, he's hyper focused, he's got overstimulated, and he can no longer emotionally cope in that environment and being around that person. And he just needs space. He needs quiet. He
Yeah.
needs a bit of stillness. He needs to
Yeah.
re-regulate himself. But he wouldn't know that. So I want for adults to think about it that way, like your inner child is with you now.
Yeah.
Know what your boundary is. So we know 45 minutes, right? So now when we do play dates, we have to be open and honest with their parents and say, he
Yeah.
can do 45 minutes and he loves it. And is that okay? That's
Yeah.
what we should do for ourselves. I'm going to go for a
Yeah.
coffee with my friend or a
100%.
drink and
Yeah.
only do 45 minutes. And if I trust them enough, I can tell them that and
Yeah.
build friends like that. And it's really special, isn't it? So using his story as an 8.5-year-old, as a 41-year-old, I'll go, that boy now knows his boundary and how he can have
Yeah.
proper friendships where he's not
Yeah. I love
disregarding.
that. Yeah.
So yeah, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts there? I think you already said, but
Yeah, absolutely love that. And I think it's so important that we teach our kids that, because if we're teaching them that, then they're going to have less issues coming to adulthood if they know their boundaries. And I think that's it's really key, because we can very quickly fall into sacrificing ourselves to please someone else or avoid someone else feeling rejected or feeling whatever might be going on for them. And if we start to access and implement those things for ourselves, those boundaries for ourselves, then we're not going to burn out as quick. We know our limits. We know that actually 2 hours coffee with a friend is maximum, and then I need to go home and rest, and that's okay. It's not constantly. We've kind of been raised in a society where you work, and you do, and it's really unhealthy for all of us, but it's particularly unhealthy for autistic ADHDers, because we can't live, our nervous systems are activated most of the time anyway. We need to have regular space where we can ground our nervous system, so we're not living in fight or flight constantly, which is going to burn us out.
yeah, it's so true. Is like how you only explain to a family member on a big day out that you can only do one of the three things,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
you might be embarrassed, shame again
Yeah.
returns. So,
Yeah.
going for a long walk, then going for a meal as family, then going back to someone's house in the afternoon.
Mhm.
That sounds like hell to me. I wouldn't be able to
Yeah.
do all three.
Yeah.
I would need to like maybe go home and have a little rest and eat some by myself and then go back out.
Yeah.
And hopefully, well, I hope we all get to a place where we have at least a small community of people who get that ND or otherwise. Go, yeah, that's cool, yeah. So you don't feel so silly about it all.
Yeah.
But I think that's the hardest part, isn't it? It's not our job to change the opinion of those around us, but it's very difficult when it's
Yeah.
family, obviously. But I
Yeah.
do find from the stories I've heard, families, not all the time, but some family members get there eventually because they're like, oh my God, I think I'm neurodivergent as well. Then they
Yeah.
go get their assessment and then you're starting to build up that. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's kind of we always encourage people to get out there, maybe find their community in regards to ND,
Mm,
because otherwise you just feel very unseen.
hmm.
And without seeing a therapist like yourself, they're not really going to get through that wall of shame, which is holding
Yeah.
them back.
Yeah.
So obviously, every client is unique,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to ask you to say what is the key thing that helps everybody, but some of the skills that you're teaching, just lightly touch on any sort of tools you send people off with. What kind of tasks or exercises are you doing with them to help them?
So I when I saw this in your question, I thought, oh, that's interesting because I don't necessarily give them tools to or tasks, if you like, to go off and work with. It's usually in the session and it's unpicking, and it's usually around personal boundaries with family members, like you say, and friends who have known you and they've got you in a they like the way you are now. It's about them testing out what is it like to implement a boundary. What is it like? Try it out with
Mm,
me. What does it feel like if you were to say, Katie, I really don't like what you just said, or I really don't like what you just did. Can you do it a different way? Can you tell me a different way? What does that feel like? What goes on in your body? Because that'll tell you where you can track back then. Where did you first experience that? And what has it told you? It's told you you're not allowed to do that. So you're not going to implement the boundary because you were told you're not allowed to implement that boundary in whatever way. So um, it's helping people to figure out, like, why can I what comes up for me when I want to say no, or I want to say yes, or whatever, but I feel like I need to do the other thing that's inauthentic. So that's kind of, so in between the sessions, it's kind of like, what, tell me a scenario that happened for you where you were able to implement, or where you were able to acknowledge, I need to implement this boundary. Maybe you couldn't quite get to it, that's okay, but you acknowledged it, you registered it. This is where I can hold this boundary, or this is where I need to pull away, or this is, do you know? And then it's just gradually building up the confidence to be able to say, actually, well, I'm not going to do that thing because I don't want to do that thing, and I don't need to give you an excuse. I just don't want to do that thing, and then building that
mm.
confidence up.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have our how we experience things in a moment, and we have a thought about that, about why we do that. But I think as we always say, the most important thing about maybe seeing a therapist or a coach and being held in that space is so you have an opportunity, even just for yourself, to
Mm-hmm.
start to bring those things up and reflect on them a bit, and have that person go, "Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So how do you feel about that?" And then you
Mm-hmm.
work together on how you can maybe have a better relationship with that. And then the next week you're going to, like you said, implement things that you want to implement, not that you've been told to do it, that you want to. And then you're able to use the space with that professional to help you reflect on your own journey, which is interesting because they talk a lot about the difference between coaching and therapy and how there's like different approaches. And sometimes it feels black and white and obvious about moving forward, reflecting on the past, things like that. But I think that's a bit too watered down. There's a lot more to it than that. But I think surely when it comes to clients, your skills, or one of your skills you hope is to be able to see what works for them. And then you can help them figure that out for themselves, isn't it? It's like, yeah, I think you might find you said this recently. Do you think that's
Mm.
why you're
Yeah,
doing this?
yeah,
And how much does it really matter to you? What are the key values? Values,
yeah,
right? Come back,
yeah,
going back to acceptance, commitment therapy. If we live by our values,
yeah,
we're on good footing, aren't we?
yeah. 100%. And it can be very challenging to stay with our values because of the conditioning we've had. But absolutely, if we come back to our values and what's really important to us, you can then begin to implement those kind of skills, and those yeah, those skills, those boundaries to be able to do what's right for you, even if it feels really difficult when there's another person or another family member involved where they've maybe not experienced you in that way for forever, and suddenly you're holding a boundary with them or you're saying no to them. And yeah, if you can come back to you, and also when you're checking in with someone, whether it's a therapist or a coach, if you're checking in regularly with them, with that person, they get to know you, and they can hold you accountable. So, and what I mean by that is hang on a second, you told me last week that this thing that you really didn't want to do was really important to you, that you didn't do it. and then you've done it. So tell me what was going on for you. Tell me what happened to your body and your nervous system that made you sacrifice yourself to do that thing. Because then it's continuous work. Then they're kind of going, oh yeah, I did say that thing last week actually, and I did go and do that thing. So actually, what can I do next time to make sure I do stay with myself?
Yeah, so powerful and know what is causing the block in the first place. So you're trying to do something, not realizing that, say, your ASD is holding you
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
But we weren't talking about ASD much in that session. So then you're like, oh my God, this is the ASD showing up again and it's stopping me taking that
mm,
action. So how can I work with that? What does rejection
mm,
from that person mean to me? How does that
mm,
feel? Why does it matter? Who
yeah,
is it? Is it my mum? Is it my dad? Is it my brother? Is it my
yeah,
sister
yeah,
from childhood? And just knowing that if you really care about something enough, personal or otherwise, and it really matters to you and it's worth fighting for, no matter
mm,
how long it takes or how hard it may become and what kind of pacing you need to do with your therapist around it, it's if it
yeah,
matters, it matters. So
yeah,
for me, the anger is going to be the number one thing that really matters to me. I don't
yeah.
want to be agitated around family members, and
Mm,
it's a
mhm,
value of mine, and I
mhm.
want to live by the value. And if you don't live by that value, you're going to be adding some more shame on top, and then we
Yeah,
come back full circle
yeah,
to our
absolutely.
episode
Yeah.
again, which is really, really important.
Mm,
But yeah, so I'm wary of the tone that we've had here today, and I get
mhm,
so sad because there's so much more we could say. But
mhm,
I appreciate we don't want to be doing 3 hour marathon charity streams, so we
mhm.
won't be doing that. But this is the cheesy opportunity for every member that comes on here and shares their stories and their wisdom. Can you give us a sort of parting message? So you're speaking to the neurodivergent gang out there in the world. Give us a little pep talk. Give us why, just tell us why we're amazing humans and it's all going to be okay.
Mm.
Basically, give us your parting message.
Yeah, so I read this question. It was the one question I was like, "Oh, goodness me, how do I even answer this question?" But I think I think when you're just figuring out, or maybe you were diagnosed as a child, or whatever, wherever you're at with it, is you're not wrong. You're not, when you talk about the experiences that you have, the emotional experience, when you've talked about your anger, like we're human and we have challenges. We have extra challenges that other people maybe don't experience. And so it's you are you're a good person, and you might have to have accommodations. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And so it's kind of get rid of the societal ableism and all of the shit that comes with what you should and how you should be, because actually you're a really unique person, and there might be challenges there, but you're incredible as you are, and you might need support, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I love that. And as you were sort of saying that, I just had this, listen to you talk as a fellow neurodivergent being, how powerful it is to be able to be authentic.
Yeah, and that adds to that self-acceptance, like that finding that community of people is like, oh yeah, I'm not abnormal. I just have these experiences, and so does this person and that person, and that's incredible.
Which is amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved this. I've met so many amazing people, and
Hmm.
yeah, I love it. I think this has gone really, really well, and I would love to have you back on as the year unfolds in a bit more detail.
Yeah,
But yeah,
amazing.
let us know now a little bit more about your business, where we can find you, and what kind of content you're putting out into the world.
Yeah, so you can find us on the neurodivergenttherapyspace.com, and I also have an Instagram page where just offer little bits of little reels about trauma, about autism and ADHD. And yeah, as I said in the beginning, we're a team of 5. We're all autistic and ADHD, and we work in a relational way. So it's not a one size fits all approach. It's very much about the individual person and what they want to talk about and what they bring and how they process information.
I love that, and yeah, go and check out the links, everybody, in the description because I just checked out the website and we talked about this off camera, off recording.
Mm.
It's actually hard to come. It's actually quite hard to find
Yeah.
neurodivergent directories
Yeah.
of people which don't feel cold, don't feel like BetterHelp. BetterHelp, we
Yeah.
have thousands of therapists. They're just a
Yeah.
heartfelt where you can see they're all pulling together and they all care about the community. And it's hard to come by. So check out the link, guys, because it's quite rare. So yeah, I encourage you to do that. But yeah, I just want to thank you so much, Katie, for all the work that you're doing, more importantly. And I know this is your first time on podcasting. I think you're an incredible guest. You know exactly what you're doing. You
Thank
know how to
you.
articulate yourself really well. So I think for your first time on a podcast, you nailed it. And I want to say congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've really loved coming on. So yeah, be good to connect again.
Amazing. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the ND Thrive Guide. And more importantly, I just want to thank all the listeners. I can see there's been a big spike in the last week or two. Who knows why? Why do we need to know? We don't. But I'll take it. This is a whole new field that we're entering now on this podcast, and it seems to really be connecting with people. So just thank you for everybody on social media as well, commenting and sharing. And this feels important. This is important work, and you're helping facilitate that. So thank you so much. So thank you for listening, and we'll be back next time for some more ND chat.